Recently, a client asked me whether dental hygienists are always independent contractors or always employees. After looking into it, I realized that this is actually a very interesting question and a little different than your normal worker classification issue. If you're curious about the wild world of dental hygienists, then stick around and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and buy my book. One disclaimer before I start. This is not legal advice, and as you will see, the analysis is extremely fact-sensitive. So if you want to know the answer as it pertains to you, then you will need to retain your own lawyer. With that out of the way, are hygienists independent contractors or employees? Well, like everything in law, it depends. Now, for those who just want the conclusion and don't want to sit through a long and detailed explanation, I hope you remember to subscribe and share this video before you bail, but here's the short answer. Hygienists can be either independent contractors or employees of the dental offices that they work for, depending on the nature of their own business, the state that they are working in, and their working arrangement with the dental offices. That's the short answer. For those interested in the details and understanding why that might be, here's what you should know. Generally speaking, all states apply one of two classification tests to determine whether a worker is an independent contractor or an employee. Which test applies depends on the state that you're in. So if you're doing the work in California, you would apply the California test and not the Texas test. The first thing to do then is to look at which test is in your specific jurisdiction. But it will either be the ABC test or what some people call the Multifactor test. Or it can be some variant or combination of these two tests. Different states might have a slightly different take on the test, but generally speaking, the first thing you need to do is look at which of these two applies and your state's specific wording and application of the test. The stricter test is called the ABC test. I say stricter because under this test, the worker is more likely to be found to be an employee as compared to the multi-factor test, but the ABC test is usually simpler and somewhat more objective. Under the ABC test, a worker is presumed to be an employee unless A, the worker is free from control and direction in connection with the performance of the service, B, the service is performed outside the usual course of the business of the employer, and C, the worker is customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, profession, or business of the same nature as that involved in the service performed. All three of these factors must be met for a worker to be an independent contractor under the ABC test. In contrast to the ABC test, a state that applies the multi-factor test will weigh many more factors. This could be a dozen or more, and no single factor controls. For this video, I'm not going to list out all of the factors. Just know that the list can change from state to state, and different states can consider some factors more important than others, even within their specific list. What makes the multi-factor test a less strict test is that when considering any specific circumstance, it will often be possible that some factors will lean towards finding that a worker is an employee, and others lean towards finding that they are an independent contractor. So the outcome is less clear than the ABC test, which has a presumption and requires all three items to be proven. The key thing to remember is that under the ABC test, a worker is an employee unless all three factors are met, whereas under the multi-factor test, there's usually no presumption. But even under the ABC test, whether prong A is met, that is whether or not someone is free from control and direction, will often require weighing multiple factors. And these could be the same factors as the multi-factor test. But because of the presumption, this subjectivity and lack of clarity weighs in favor of finding an employment relationship. With that said, does this mean that dental hygienists who perform dental hygienist services for dental offices are always employees of those offices in ABC states? The answer is no. They are not always employees, and they may be independent contractors. It depends on the circumstances. Now, here's what makes this question so interesting as it regards to dental hygienists. Because hygienists are licensed, there are specific regulations that they must comply with. Obviously, unless we do a detailed analysis in every state, we can't say for sure that it's possible for a dental hygienist to be an independent contractor in every single state. It might be possible that some state has a law that specifically forbids it. But let's look at California, because if any state is likely to find that a worker should be classified as an employee, it's California. California actually has a section of the Business and Professions Code called Registered Dental Hygienist in Alternative Practice Corporation, which allows dental hygienists to operate under their own professional corporation. This special type of professional corporation has its own regulations about how it can be formed, what licenses are needed, what it can do, etc., etc., etc. But since one corporation can never be an employee of another corporation, that means that this special entity allows hygienists to work as independent contractors to dental offices. It's a different question whether they would be contractors or employees of their own professional corporation, but this is at least one way that a dental office can work with hygienists without even having to worry about the ABC test. It is important to note, though, that Section 1925 of the Business and Professions Code specifically says that a registered dental hygienist in alternative practice, and that's referring to the individual, not the corporation, is either an employee or independent contractor. So that right there answers the question, at least with regards to registered dental hygienists in alternative practice. The law in California expressly provides that they may be independent contractors. But what about a hygienist who is not a registered dental hygienist in alternative practice? Well, California law separates hygienist procedures into different levels of required supervision from a dentist. Some procedures must be under direct supervision, some under general supervision, and others without direct supervision. And California Business and Professions Code Section 1911A actually provides that a dental hygienist may provide, without supervision, educational services, oral health training programs, and oral health screenings. And Section 1911.5 allows for fluoride varnish without any supervision. These sections were actually recently amended in January of 2021, so if you're a long-time practicing dental hygienist, you might not be aware of this. Previously, some of these functions were allowed without supervision, but only under a public health program. Regardless, as you can see, the law is complicated, and going into all of the nuance and details as it relates to hygienists would turn this into an hour-long video. But it's definitely not the case that 100% of hygienists are employees of the dentist or other agency that is hiring them 100% of the time. It depends entirely on the individual circumstance.